Three, two, one. Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Steve Tunstall. And Steve and I are going to be talking about the risk of Asia for the global north. So
it's quite provocative, Tim. Hi, everybody.
It is. And we're never going to do it in 20 minutes, but we'll try. So, Steve, important that, where can people find you?
So I'm all over socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, you name it. I've got accounts there under Steve Tunstall. You can also try my website, which is tunstallasc.com or tunstall.sg. So easy to find me. Just Google me. I'll be the first 20 entries on your Google result.
Excellent. And you're based in Singapore, aren't you?
That's right. I'm now a proud Singaporean as of 3 years ago. So I've been a permanent resident here for 20 years, but took the plunge and took the passport 3 years back.
Excellent. So how would you define risk from Asia in the context of its impact on the global north? What are we talking about here?
So I think it's pretty difficult to generalize, but if you look at the history, I mean, Asia has sort of underpunched for its weight now for a couple of 100 years. You go back a couple of 100 years plus, and roughly over half the world's GDP came from Asia, and China was the standout amongst that, though India had a lot of peaks and troughs, and so did Turkey and the Middle East and a few other areas. But the last couple of 100 years obviously have been dominated by the West in various forms, with the Spanish, the Portuguese, the British, and then most latterly the Americans. But that sort of came to an end in 2025, I think. 2025, we see the end of the world's first and only ever global hegemony. So after the Berlin Wall went down in 1989, I guess that was 36 years of US global hegemony. That's pretty clearly ended now. Arguably, it might have ended a few years back, but I think the current US administration has totally pulled the veil away and shown that they have neither the ability or, in fact, frankly, the desire to be the global actor anymore. So there are big changes underway, and part of that is the global South stepping up and taking back its sort of rightful role, really.
So we're not talking just about China and the increase of BYD and all of those things. We're talking about Asia as a whole, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, you can pick out particular things in Western media that get highlighted, and obviously China is one, BYD is another, but that's hardly touching the tip of the iceberg across the whole of Asia. I mean, diving very simply into the geopolitics we've seen this year, I mean, BRICS has now got 24, 25 countries in it.
BRICS being what was Brazil, Russia, India,
China, South Africa.
South Africa.
Yeah. So now it covers well over half the world's population. That gets shown somewhat in Western press, but not that much. It's still, everyone sort of says it'll never work, yada yada. Actually, it's working really well, and countries are queuing up to join. A lot of countries are queuing up to join. But it's not the only game in town. There's also ASEAN +3.
Yeah. Which is
3 being Japan, Korea, and China. And the foreign ministers of all those countries got together in Milan, I think it was about 2 months ago, and issued a joint communique. So if you look at ASEAN +3, that's actually more GDP than the US, about, I think, 8 or 9 times the population, and massive amounts of future GDP growth. So if something like that kicks off, that's a more geographically sensible combination of countries than BRICS, because it's very much focused in Asia. But there's lots of other things going on as well. There's lots of other collaborations. We've seen with the recent celebrations in Shanghai, the parade of global leaders from the global south who've come on through and endorsed what's happening in general. So there's lots of different ways this could shake out, but to really summarize, Asia has over half the world's population. It has well over half the world's GDP growth, and that's going to be for the rest of our lifetimes. It's not going to change in a hurry. So this isn't just a sort of blip of a few years in the early 2020s. It isn't just BYD, and we can get into Chinese brands generally.
Yeah.
It's much deeper. It's much more. I think of it as like there's a twanging sound as the global norm springs back into place.
Because what we're seeing, I think, also, isn't it, that from a supply chain perspective, there was kind of a norm for the supply chain. You outsourced your manufacturing to Asia, and now what's happening is that with Make America Great Again, they're wanting to insource manufacturing. There's the manufacturing transformation. So the feedback that I'm getting is that if any manufacturing moves back to America, it will be dark manufacturing. So there won't be any people.
Yes.
And then we're seeing a complete change as well in terms of what's driving. What do we want? Well, we actually want rare minerals. We want AI processors. And so kind of the supply chain manufacturing pieces has moved around as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, China has been getting these warning shots primarily from the US, but from the West in general for 20, 30 years now. So what have they done with the Belt and Road Initiative? They've tied up all of those supply chain issues right across the global south. So all the deals they wanted in Africa, in South America, in the Middle East, and other parts of Asia, they've already got all those deals. And these are not deals, so they don't run through the traditional Western exchanges and commodity indexes. They literally step outside that and do one-to-one country deals with their target countries, which then are very favorable to China, but also favorable to the local country. They're pretty good deals. They get a bad press in the West, but they're pretty good deals. They say, well, we commit to take this at market price for the next 5 years, blah, blah, blah. But we're not going to do it through the market. We'll do it on a direct one-on-one contract. And then that gives them that security. We've just seen that playing out. It's in the news again now because the US soybean production is just getting to harvest. And at the start of the year, when China got to get afflicted with tariffs, it said, well, we're not buying any more soybeans from the US.
Yeah.
It's gone to Brazil. It's done a long-term lock-in deal with Brazil. Farmers are now harvesting in the US and saying, hang on a minute, that's 60% plus of our overseas market. And there have been 0 deals done between the US and China this year. So these guys are now reaching crisis point because it's all been taken out of that supply chain. And that's just one example. I mean, there are dozens of examples, and they definitely cut across all the rare earths, the minerals, but also most of the world's sort of, deep mining capabilities have been tied up by China as well, either in China or right across Africa. I mean, I've traveled a lot in Africa in the last decade and a half.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go, you see the same thing. You see the ports are built by China. You see that the parliament is built by China so that they keep the elites happy, and then all the football stadiums are built by China as well. So they're keeping everybody happy in all of these countries in Africa. Meanwhile, the World Bank and the IMF just say, yeah, you can have some money, but only on condition that you change the whole of your political structure to suit us. And guess what? That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I remember being in South Africa. It was the first time Zuma, basically, so that dates it. First time, it was when he was being elected the first time. That's 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And there was a presentation from the Chinese, and the Chinese basically said, in terms of empires, America has Europe as an empire, and we're going to have Africa as an empire. And as you know, that what they did was that they got Chinese people equivalent to black in South Africa. and they've just gone through the whole of Africa, and they see it as there, and theirs, and over the last 25 years that they've done those deals. I want to move to tech.
Yep.
And talk about 5G, 6G, AI, robotics, and cybersecurity. So, what's your position on that?
So, I think before you talk about tech, you have to talk about energy.
Okay.
And China has put a massive amount of money into building energy infrastructure. And you can Google these sorts of charts. They're in The Economist and all the rest of them. You can see that China's energy capability has completely skyrocketed. They now have energy production capability, I think, 4 or 5 times the US. And only maybe 15, 20 years ago, they were much lower than the US. Meanwhile, the US energy production capability has flatlined. If you want to do AI, if you want to do tech, you want to do all these things, you have to have electricity. If you don't have electricity, you're scorched. It's gone. Okay. And the US doesn't have it and doesn't have a plan to get any. So that's the background. Then you move into the tech itself. Over 50% of the top US based AI experts are Chinese.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that there already in the US. Some of that's gone home, but actually the most successful tech players in China are entirely homegrown. And again, the Western press sort of misses this. The whole of the DeepSeek team were entirely homegrown, which is why they did something entirely different to the Western approach to all these things. When you look at the AI robotics Olympics that just took place in Beijing, and there was a similar sort of event I saw in Shenzhen, these are really light years ahead of most of the production capabilities in the US. There's maybe 1 or 2 standout examples. I mean, love him or hate him, Elon Musk and Tesla is doing wonderful things with his robotics stuff. Yeah. And there's 2 or 3 other companies, but I'm not sure they're going to scale fast enough. I would never underestimate Elon because he can. Yeah. He's. I mean, you're going to look at Grok is now the best AI in the West by a long way. On the latest Grok 4 forecast says it's still.
I used Grok yesterday and it was like, whoa, wow.
Yeah. I've been using Grok a lot. But then I also use DeepSeek and others just to run the numbers and get some comparisons. But I think the broader issue in China is just the sheer depth of strength that they have now in multiple industries. And the way I heard it explained as well is because almost everything there is open source, they all flywheel off each other in a way that is completely incompatible with the capitalist system. So we've spent all these years saying, yeah, you've stolen all our IP. Actually, they don't think like that. It's part of their economy is to share it and to build off each other's.
But you've got to remember that Uber was actually copied off the Chinese.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of
China had for 5 years the Uber equipment from WeChat.
That was Didi, wasn't it?
Yeah. From because and the thing is that WeChat is a complete different structure to the way that Facebook works.
Completely, and dominant across the whole of the nation. So that's that side of things. I think the other aspect that doesn't really get brought out enough. You mentioned yourself BYD.
Yeah.
BYD we see as a visible brand going overseas. What we don't see is any brands connected with their solar capabilities, their wind power capabilities, et cetera, But essentially, they've demolished the cost of production of these things so that it's now trivial. One of the interesting things I saw, and I'll get the data wrong on this, but I think it was in Pakistan. Pakistan is not producing any more energy than it was like 5 years ago, but the demand on the grid is now level, but the use of energy across the country has skyrocketed, I think 3-4 times in the last 4 years. And that's because the market has been flooded with very cheap solar panels from China. And like every, essentially underdeveloped village now has multiple solar panels on multiple properties.
Wow.
So they all have electricity now.
Yeah.
So they don't need big old-fashioned hydroelectric, coal-fired, whatever it is, because they're all doing dirt cheap solar in a semi-rural or rural environment. So there's huge changes like that. The other thing that's not really recognized yet in the West, but it will be, is China is doing the same with every single brand that it's done with BYD, thinking of BYD as a BMW replacement, half the price, twice as good.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I see here in Asia is them experimenting, bringing those brands offshore. So when I walk around different city shopping malls now around the region, I'm seeing Chinese brands for the first time. And I'm not only seeing BYD, I see about 20 car brands that I've never seen before. And the issue then is if you take the BYD example and you play that out large. So I don't know if you've heard of Luckin Coffee, but Luckin
I haven't,
Coffee.
but I've read about it in The Economist or something. But
Right.
go ahead.
Right. Well, it's roughly half the price of Starbucks.
Yeah.
Quality is the same, so far as I can tell, but everything is app based when you order. So your first coffee costs you 99 cents because you get it through the app. And then the more you buy, the more discounts you get. So it becomes a flywheel approach. So in most of Asia cities now, Gen Z and Gen A will never buy Starbucks because they're brought up with their app buying Luckin Coffee. So I think, again, I'll get the data wrong, but there's literally hundreds of Starbucks closed across China in the last few years. And I think we can see that replicating across Southeast Asia. Now, they're not only doing this for coffee, they're doing it for fashion brands, they're doing it for the IKEA equivalents. Even they have a copycat golden arches as well. I can't remember the exact name of it in Chinese, but I can see them doing exactly this for McDonald's right across Asia as well.
But there seems to be, as you said, there's this complete reinvention of everything, isn't it? From a retail and a cars perspective. And we're hearing about BYD here, but no one's really taking it seriously, of course. Whereas they need to be.
Yeah, to be honest, the Western car industry is dead. It's gone. So if you still own shares in Ford or GM or BMW, well, good luck with that, quite frankly. I mean, it's not financial advice, but if they can produce cars that are twice as good for half the price, then good luck continuing to compete. Yeah. And they've also, I can't remember if it was BYD or Huawei, have now patented this last few months a car battery that will do 3,000 kilometers on one 15-minute charge. So that means you can go there and back 3 times across Australia on one charge of your car battery. So why would you ever want to put that oil stuff in your vehicle ever again? It's just an antique already.
Yeah, so we've had a comment from Andrew. Andrew is a long-time supporter of ours. Good morning. Has Western countries' ability to compete with China due in part to the Western's political cycle and elections making long-term planning for infrastructure near impossible?
Good question. So this is essentially gets to the crux of the matter, Andrew. So it's a great question because what works really well in China and works well in Singapore, quite frankly, is you get that long-term political stability. So you get a democratic process, but not as it's recognized in the West. And that means that you can do 5, 10, 20-year plans. And with 5, 10, 20-year plans, you can do 5, 10, 20-year infrastructure projects, which is essential. Yeah. Because if you look at the cost of putting projects in China compared to putting projects in the West, they are absolutely minuscule by comparison because you don't have that huge element of bureaucracy that goes along with it. I mean, America always says our GDP is way above that of China. And yes, and China's delighted that it is, because they don't have 20% of their economy going to lawyers and lobbyists. Yeah, they don't need all that stuff. China doesn't need that stuff. And that's why their infrastructure is, they have now, 3,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. I think the rest of the world has about 120 or something.
Steve, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. We could have gone on for ages. I've only got to question 4 of my questions. I always need to make sure there's enough. But today I knew that we'd carry on talking. Steve, so where can people find you?
TunstalASC.com or Tunstall.sg are the websites, and just Google Steve Tunstall, you'll find me. You might find a marathon runner as well, but he'll come up as like number 19 on a list of 20. So most of the links will be to me. And
okay, Tim, that's not the marathon runner, isn't you then?
Say again?
The marathon runner isn't you?
No, that's definitely not me.
Okay, there's a Christian rock star called Tim Hughes, so I'm always competing with him on that. I keep meaning to reach out to him, saying hello, but I forget.
Very good.
And Andrew says thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much. So, Steve, thank you very much for today.